How's it? And welcome back. Moving the Needle podcast. I think we're going to have some fun this week. A Masters world champ had a good career in downhill, and I used to follow that along before I got on the race circuit. He's told me not to forget his X Games snow medal, which I won't. We'll definitely chat about that. But you might know him better for one of the most exciting, epic, don't know how they were allowed to stay on TV, downhill commentary runs. But I know him for the last 16 odd years running CRC. Man, they had some success in enduro and downhill. And I'll tell you what, Pagey, I'm excited for this. It's none other than Nigel Page. Welcome to the show. It's long overdue, I think.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me. It's an honour to be on the show, and I'm looking forward to having a good chat with you, mate. I've known you a long time. When you were a wee dude on the Mongoose bikes, and following your career, you've had an amazing career, and I'm looking forward to having a chat.
Yeah, it's we never were on the same team, or I didn't get the honor of being on your team, but I always enjoyed coming past. You're always so positive and very nice, complimenting all riders. I could really sense that you wanted everyone to do as well as they could, whether on other teams or whatever. You seem to really be there just for the riders, whether you had a small budget to work with or not. I could see how much effort and passion went into it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you probably, as you know, people that know me, I literally love bikes. My life revolves around bikes. Started biking, when I was a tiny kid, like everyone does, and it's really the only thing I've ever put, a lot of effort into and passion into. Still love bikes just as much as I ever did today. And yeah, I mean, running the race team. I think I was lucky enough to race World Cups for a few years when I was a bit younger, and got into mountain biking a bit later, sort of in my mid-20s. Never thought that I'd be racing World Cups or anything, or making it as a profession, but I just love riding my bike, and I think like going to the World Cups myself and kind of putting my own program together. Having to look after myself and get help from people, and really appreciated all the help I got from people's mechanics, or other teams letting me stay on the couch or whatever, when I was trying to make it around the world. I think that sort of gave me the passion when I ran a team to try and do the utmost I could for riders, because I knew how important it was to help towards your race weekend. But as well as running a team, and loving bikes, I appreciate any good bike rider, no matter what team they ride for, who they are. I just really enjoy seeing people do well, and especially people that are nice, and they've kind of got the same vibe as I have. They just love riding the bikes and want to make the most of it. So yeah, I think that helped. And as I say, anybody that gets on a World Cup podium like you've done is just, I think, is phenomenal. It's so hard to do that. So anyone who's got close to that or managed to do that, in my book, is just amazing. One of the you couldn't sort of, I don't know, if bike's your life, you can't get much better than that. So yeah, just tried to help as many people as I could. If I could have had more riders on the team, I probably would have done it. Some years I had probably too many riders, just because I wanted to help people. I saw potential in people and wanted to help them. So I've probably made a few mistakes along the way with that. But yeah, I just like helping people try and achieve their goals.
Yeah, I saw it. And you can see a lot of teams that have former riders as team managers, or now, I guess PD's doing that a bit, but he's obviously doing the lines coaching, and you were doing that back in the day. Yeah, how much do you think that helped? Because I really think you're able to cut through the bullshit of what's really needed for a ride, or what's important during a race weekend, even if the budgets are pretty tight.
Yeah, I mean, for me, and I'm not saying I've got the right recipe, because there's plenty of other teams that have had more success than I have. But for me, the number one thing is obviously to all have fun, and sort of be happy and get on with each other and make it a fun time when we're away, because as you do a lot of traveling. Some people are better at being away from home than other people. Some people are kind of home birds and get homesick, and they have a lot going on back home that they're kind of missing out on. Other people just want to be away at the races and just love the whole thing. So having like a good balance of that, as well as obviously having everything organized that you need to have organized. You've got to have food ready for the riders. You've got to have good mechanics to look after the bikes. You've got to have the right accommodation, which isn't always easy. And just providing the athletes with what they need. I think also when I was putting together the programs, I always tried to put together like the bike that I would like to ride if I didn't have any sponsors. So, a good frame, good tires, good wheels, good suspension, good brakes, so that then the riders haven't got any excuse on the components on the bike. Like yourself, and I think we all tend to do it at some point in our careers. If you're not getting the results, you start questioning your equipment. So, I always tried to get a bike that I would be happy to ride myself and believed in. If some, obviously I had a lot faster riders on the team than I was, but as long as they're happy with the equipment, I think that's a key point. And then also, just having, just obviously being serious when it comes into the race and trying to keep your riders, believing in themselves and not doubting themselves, and trying to keep that good vibe there. And then also being up on the track like Petey does, like you mentioned. Now I always tried to do that. Maybe not, as I say, if I had riders on the team that were much better than me, I might not be able to ride as good as them, but I can spot the lines. So if one of the contenders for the win that weekend is doing a certain line and my riders weren't doing it, then I would show them that and point it out and say, look, you might want to try that line. It looks a little bit faster, and just doing stuff like that. But also, I think a big part of what and some other riders might disagree, but I think when you're not at a race weekend, just going out for a bike ride with your riders, I think is for me was really important to try and keep it fun outside of the racing, and going riding, taking the piss out of each other's riding. Every time I go riding with Sam, he'd always make me go before him, and then he'd be trying to overtake me on every corner when I'm flipping, holding on for my life, thinking there's no way I can go any faster than this. But just that kind of stuff is really fun. And for me, I have to ride my bike, as well as being a team manager, and running a team or whatever I'm doing in the industry. I have to go on my bike at least, a few times a week, or I get real moody and grumpy, and I wouldn't be as good a team manager as I could be.
Yeah, so that's the secret, because I always come past, and now with e-bikes and stuff, I see you on the e-bikes going out, and I think that's awesome. And I would love riding with the mechanics, and often there'd be too many excuses to not get them out. But as you know, happy rider's a fast rider, happy mechanic's probably a hard-working one, and that's key, isn't it? And like you say, I think one of the biggest challenges with our sport is potentially the foreigners that are away from home for long. You can see it in a season. You can see it in the results. Like there'll be good results in the beginning, and often the Aussies or me, I know I'd have a dip. And then once I saw light in the tunnel, the last few races, okay, I'm only away for another 4 weeks. Like, let's get it on, and we get into an off season. So yeah, it's really important that you were aware of that. And like you say, okay, maybe Sam's away for a bunch of weeks, but then force him to go for a bike ride, even though he might not want to. And then he realizes why he rides bikes again. And that's super key. And part of me, a lot of your riders, it seems you kind of grab the misfits. You grab the riders that maybe the industry had written off. Maybe their age on paper looked a little bit older, or some injuries were happening, and you just stuck by them. And I think that's huge, as you said, to because riders' belief can really go away really quickly. And I think of someone like Kavarik at the tail end of his career was with you. Maddie had some injuries either before he got on with you or on you, and later on maybe Sam Hill deciding he's going to go into enduro. People think, well, that's a crazy idea, but you just believed in the riders. You sort of saw something like, hey, if I can get them to a happy place and the support they need, I think they'll still perform for years to come.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, there's a few factors in choosing a rider, which obviously budget's the first one. You speak to the riders that you'd like to work with, and you get an idea on what kind of budget they're looking for salary, and then obviously if you have a rider like yourself or Sam, being a UK based team, then there's quite a lot more budget involved in traveling, especially when the rider's a bit older, like Sam, for instance. When he came onto our team in 2013, he already had a family back at home, so him just coming over to Europe for the whole season isn't an option. So you've got to factor all that stuff. Also, it's probably not, maybe one of the downfalls in me having the most success you could ever have with a team is I sort of, as well as having a fast bike rider, I also like certain people's style and how they ride a bike and stuff. And that comes into a factor with me. If certain riders, I'm sure you're the same, certain riders are super fast, but some riders just have a really cool style, the way they go about doing the business. And that really sort of gets me excited about a rider and wanting to work with a rider. When I first put the chain reaction team together back in the day, obviously with Chris Kavarik, my old mechanic Dave Garland, who's unfortunately not with us anymore, he was a huge help in me putting the team together. And then I picked young Rory Cunningham at the time, who just won the Junior World Championships in 2007 in Fort William. Matt Simmons was a really fast UK guy, and then we ended up picking Julian Camellini. Dave had been working a little bit with Julian. Obviously knew who he was and knew he was super fast, but Julian was completely the opposite kind of person, rider to Kavarik. But I'd say one of the biggest disappointments I've had with the team was Chris not meeting his potential. To this day, I've never been bike riding with many other people that impressed me as much as Kavarik on a bike. I got the opportunity to ride with him for the Intense Factory team for like a season and a half. I'd done some racing in the UK. I raced with Steve Peat, Rob Warner, all the top UK guys, and I used to go riding with Steve a lot. And I couldn't understand sort of how Petey rode his bike. Like, he had such a different style to me. And certain things that I was trying to learn at the time, I just couldn't get my head around it. And then when I started riding with Chris, I don't know if it's because he was on flat pedals the same as me. Again, I'm nowhere near as in the same caliber as Chris as a rider, but watching him ride and riding with him just elevated my results in 6 months, like crazily, just because I kind of could figure out what he was doing. And Chris won some World Cups back, in the tail end of when I was racing downhill, with basically no training, just natural and just phenomenal. And unfortunately, I got Chris onto the team, and I just wanted him to win more than anything. And he still had the potential to win for sure, but he just unfortunately didn't have the whole package to do that. He liked partying and, having a good time and everything else. He put all his effort into it when he was racing, but at that point in the downhill, World Cup, you had to do a lot more than just be an actual bike rider to win World Cups consistently. And I wish Chris had put 100% effort into everything, because I think we'd have definitely won some more World Cups with Chris. And then
it's similar to Rennie, isn't it? That like tail end of the career. Part of me thinks it's the away from home, just being dedicated to the sport and sacrificing home life for so long. I realized that a little bit. I mean, it's hard to, always go to bed on time and eat the right stuff and do the training, and then a few results go bad. And you're like, I'm missing out on things at home. You feel like the grass is greener, i.e., being at home, what you're missing out. And it kind of isn't. We now know that, probably myself and yourself, like, hey, life was always going to be there. Maybe I should have just kept at it a little longer, a little bit more. So part of me thinks it's that, like, you get burnt out of it, and that's his release. Is maybe when he was younger, he could stop himself from partying the night before a race or something silly.
Yeah, and I also think, there's so many different personalities in every industry, in every sport. And some people's personality is, once they're not on the bike and racing, they get bored. And then, also, people who you would think are super confident on a bike, behind riding a bike, they're not as confident. And then I don't know whether, the stress of it, and then, we've done it ourselves. It's nice to relax at the end of the day and have a beer when it's been a stressful day or whatever. But, some people in every walk of life just can't have that one beer and call it a night. They carry on, and then it becomes a habit. And as you say, if you're at home and you've got things to do at home, you can't always just go and have a beer and relax. But when you're away and you've done your job for the day, racing your bike and all the stress that comes with that, what else is there to do? There's not a lot to do, is there? So it's quite easy to go and do that and get into a habit of doing the wrong things. And some personalities are better at dealing with that than others, I guess.
Is that why you lost some of your hair, dealing with some of the riders' choices? Or I can guess that it was more frustrating and sad not seeing the potential fulfilled, because maybe you and I would go, man, if I had that talent, imagine the shit I could have done. There's part of you is not jealous, just like, shit, if I had that talent, I would have hoped I could have done even better.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to quite put a finger on it, because, as I say, like every personality is different. So the fastest riders I've had on my team are all quite different. But like you say, I've never been I've got a friend, Dale Holmes, who's a BMX racer that I've known since back in the day, back when I was racing BMX as a kid, and I still see Dale now. Dale was a phenomenal bike racer, maybe not the most naturally talented BMX bike rider in the world, but his dedication to training and doing absolutely everything he had to do to meet his potential. I've not met many people like that, and I used to go and stay at Dale's house, and I learned a lot from him. I haven't kind of got that personality. I'm a bit in the middle. I'm not super crazy, but I'm not super dedicated either. So, when I was racing downhill, I didn't know about training or anything. I was just kind of riding my bike for fun. But you can be, decently fit and stuff if you're just riding your bike all the time, like But once you get to that very pinnacle of any sport, I think you have to have discipline and a kind of program to kind of stick to. And then whatever's working for you, you should remember that and kind of go back to that. What you did when you were doing well. Obviously, things change, and as we get older, you have to sort of train differently, and injuries and stuff like that. But yeah, I've definitely had a few riders that I don't think met their complete full potential, and and not for the team as such that I'm disappointed. Just as a fan of those athletes, I would like. Obviously, I enjoy the success when they do well for the team, because there's so much effort goes into it. But just for themselves as well, just to meet their full potential is because, as you say, when you get older and you don't get the opportunity to race and do all that, it's super cool to look back on your achievements.
I think you said a super important thing. There are different strokes for different folks, right? And different personality types. And maybe I know that you need, I use dedication, and I had a coach and a schedule, and I was also a bit more in the middle, knew I had to be happy and have fun. So some managers would not understand why I was always chatting to other team managers like you, or riders in between practice runs. It's like, it's a lot of pressure and stress. But when I was on the bike or looking at lines, and the night before, I was focused. So part of you wants to release. But I think also some personality types, and not talking about any of your riders or anyone in specific, I think there is a place where people don't put the full effort in, because it raises expectations, raises pressure. And if you don't achieve it, it's more of a failure. You go, well, I put 100% in and I still got 6. Shit. That hurts. If you say, yeah, I kind of put everything in, but I kind of didn't have time, or I didn't train, or training's for kooks, you've got an out. So there's part of me that knows that there's personality types like that won't put 100 in, and then they don't feel as bad about, say, a bad race or a failure as well. It's quite an interesting dynamic.
No, absolutely. And I'm probably still I still probably do that myself to this day. If I go and do a vet race or whatever, I'll turn up and say, oh, I'm not as fit as that person, or don't put the effort in, or I'm not serious. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, I want to win this race, but I'm kind of using that as an excuse before I even start, So yeah, definitely.
It lowers the pressure and expectations. But I think it's more a trick. Eventually your brain figures out, like, you're just trying to trick it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Just mentioning a few people that I've had on the team that you will know, and all amazing bike riders. So, as an example, in 2014, we had a really good, strong group of riders. We had Sam, who was coming back to his best. We had young Mike Jones, he's just a lunatic. And then we had
full lunatic.
But honestly, one of the nicest kids you'll ever have on your team once you get to know him. Just a heart of gold, just straight down the line. I got into a few situations with Mike where some media guys were like, oh, he's rude, he's arrogant, he doesn't want to do things. He's not at all. He just didn't really understand all that stuff. He's just a young kid from the middle of South Wales that just crazy, just super fast on his bike. And then the third person we had on the team was Joe Smith, who's such a good bike rider, like insane bike rider. And so I had 3 completely different personalities on the team. You've got Sam, who's quiet, who obviously everybody knows is incredible on a bike. Sam is super confident within himself, not big-headed, talking about how good he is. Mike Jones, no clue how fast. He's just super fast. Doesn't think about it, just flat out. But obviously another incredible bike rider in his own right. And then Joe Smith, who's probably as good as both of them put together, as in, bike riding skills, but just nowhere near the confidence in himself that those 2 riders had. So to me, I was trying to figure out how to manage those guys and help them. Mike and Sam got on really well together, like probably the best relationship I've had on a team, with two individual riders, because everybody's different. Sam was happy because he had Mike on the team and we were having fun, and he liked the bike and he was starting to go really fast, and just the momentum was growing with Sam. So each week he was getting faster and faster. Mike was just absolutely buzzing to be riding with Sam Hill. And so every practice run, he'd be following him down the track and just getting faster and faster. And then Joe, who doesn't gel with everybody as easily because of his own personality, didn't always practice with them, and he practiced on his own. And whether he was thinking, I'm not good enough to practice with them, I'm still not quite sure, or Joe's not quite as confident, so he was messing about with his bike a bit more. And I wish those three would have rode together a little bit more. Obviously, they did sometimes, and we had some phenomenal results with all of them. I think one year in Wyndham, I think all three of them were in the top 10. So they all had the potential, but it's just different personalities and different people.
And I forget what did Sam win one on your team, a downhill, not before he went to enduro. I forget the timing of his wins.
Yeah. So I signed Sam in 2013. So at the end of 2012, we'd done 2 years on Nukeproof bikes. We started off 2011 with the first Nukeproof Scout bike that myself, Dale, one of the engineers at CRC, and a guy called Brant Richards sort of put together. I actually went to Whistler one year when all the when the guys were all doing crankworks, and I didn't take my bike because we had so many spares and wheels and tires and stuff, and we were already talking at Chain Reaction about making some bikes with Nukeproof. They own the brand, and they were just making handlebars and pedals and saddles and that kind of stuff. And we were working with Intense. I rode for Intense for a long time, but obviously Chain Reaction were putting most of the budget in, and then we started using Nukeproof components on the bike, and then we started discussing making our own bike and turning it into a bike brand. So we came up with the first Nukeproof Scalp downhill frame, which worked really well. I basically rode every downhill bike I could get my hands on that were from the demo week in Whistler, and just
did laps you now?
On us. Yeah, just we never had the budget to go and buy different bikes and ride different bikes. Obviously, I'd rode Intense for about 11 years. I'd never even rode any other brands for so long. So the bikes that I managed to get my hands on at the time was Eric Carter lent me a GT demo bike. I borrowed a Trek off somebody. I borrowed a friend of mine that works at MBR magazine lent me an Orange. So I rode that quite a lot. And then Cesar Rojo was there, and he'd brought his first Monraker bike, and he actually contacted me and asked me would I do some runs on the bike to let him know what I thought about it. And then I rode Chris's Intense. I think that was all the bikes I rode. And it was interesting because I can kind of ride most bikes, as long as my handlebars are in the right position and my brakes and I'm confident with the tires. But it was very interesting. The two bikes that I liked best was the Intense and the Monraker. The Trek was super easy to ride. There was nothing weird about it. It was just simple to ride and didn't do anything weird. The Orange had good geometry, but I didn't really like the way the suspension worked when you landed off a jump or went through a corner. It kind of like the bike grew and did some weird stuff. It wasn't a bad bike though. I enjoyed riding it. The GT, I literally couldn't ride it. It was just the head angle was too steep on it, and it just felt weird. I was like scared to go as fast as I can ride. That the bike made me feel a bit scared at the time. I think that was like the single pivot sort of monocoque one with this weird suspension around the bottom bracket. But it was literally the
Yeah,
head
but you say
angle.
that was like 012. I feel like
That would
that's
have
when
been.
Brooke was struggling anyway. Like they've way redesigned that now.
Yeah, the bike looks
You're
great
saying
now.
it was back then. Yeah.
But anyway, so I literally came home from the. Sorry, I'm going off topic. I'll explain why in a minute.
Love it.
Uh,
Love it.
I and then I got home from there and I made notes of all the geometry of all those bikes I'd rode, and then I came up with all the geometry for the bike that I wanted, and I sort of looked at all the suspension characteristics of all the bikes that I'd rode and what I liked, and so we came up with the single. I actually rang Dave Weagle, and asked him about using a DW link for our bike, but at the time, and rightly so, it was a certain amount per frame that Dave was charging to use his suspension design, and we couldn't really, or they didn't have the budget to want to do that when we were starting a new brand. So we got to a good point with the intense bike on the suspension curve and stuff, and I explained this to the engineers, and they came up with a suspension curve on a single pivot linkage bike, which is basically the same bike as the the latest Nukeproof Descent. Now it's just tweaked a little bit over the years, and we got a prototype made up, and we were at the Mega Avalanche, and that got sent over with the guys from CRC who were racing it, and I ended up racing the Masters downhill race at a swap. I can't remember the name of the track there, but you've probably rode it. It's like a really gnarly French downhill track. So I was
on the other side of Mega Avalanche, you drop into the other valley.
Yeah. And I was a bit nervous to ride it because I thought, there's no way this can be as good as the Intense that we rode for years, and blew my mind how good it was. It didn't do anything weird. It rode great. Obviously, it was a quite early prototype, and all the linkages were coming out, and I was losing bolts left, right, and centre. But the actual ride of the bike and the geometry and everything was bang on. And so we ended up making that bike and deciding to change the team up going into 2011. And so we lost Kovarik and Julian Camellini, kept Matt Simmons, and I ended up sponsoring a few sort of younger and up and coming riders from the UK, because the focus with the team at that point was to try and still do World Cups, but to try and race the UK national scene as well, which had a good scene at the time, and to develop the bike. So we did that for a couple of years, and then at the end of 2012, we were, I had Matty on board. Matty had obviously had a few injuries and stuff, like you mentioned before, but I knew Matty had the potential. I really liked Matty, and also Matty had, a really good personality, and he was really liked in the industry and the race scene. So I wanted a rider to kind of head the team with Nukeproof, because Nukeproof, a lot of people were saying to me at the time, why are you doing Nukeproof? It's a crap name. You're going to ruin the team. And I didn't believe any of that. I just thought, we'll make a good bike, and eventually it'll turn it into a good bike brand. And luckily that's what happened. But at the time, I had Joe Smith, Lewis Buchanan, who was super fast. We had Matty, and at the end of the first year, Matty got 8th place at Val di Sole World Cup, which, as you know, you've podiumed there. That is a gnarly track. So
you need a good bike to get down there for sure.
Exactly. Obviously at the end of the day, it's the rider that does the job, but your bike has got to be working, hasn't it? And it's got to be a decent bike. And I think that cemented, I thought it was a great bike, but, I always doubted myself, thinking, I'm not at the level of these guys. So I just thinking it's a good bike. And I think that cemented it to us that, Matty coming 8th there was, wow, we've got a competitive bike already. So at that point, and then unfortunately, I was 100% confident that Matty was going to go from there and be on the podiums at the next year's World Cups because, his pace was there. I think he was enjoying being on the team. Me and Matty, Matty, he's one of my best friends I've ever had from mountain biking. Love him to bits. Wanted him to do well, and then he had that horrific injury when he was racing in was it Sweden, and he got similar to the crash that Jackson Goldstone had at Medina Hardline. He got bucked and rode the front wheel flat out, and unfortunately Matty hit a tree head on with his face and had those horrific injuries that he had. And in my opinion, that was the end of Matty's career of going up. He came back and rode and did some great races, but I don't think you can come back from an injury like that personally. But anyway, that's for another story. But anyway, at the end of the 2012 season, we'd had some great results in the UK. I think Matt Simmons had won the UK National Series. Joe Smith had won the National Series one year. With having some phenomenal riders in the UK like Danny Hart, Josh Bryceland, and they'd legitimately won the series. And then I said to my boss, I think we need to. I think it's time now where we need a podium contender at the World Cups. We've got this great team. Jamie Action Cycles is now a brand that's known around the world. Nukeproof bikes are starting to be good. People were coming and asking me about them, and Sam came. I'd always known Sam a little bit, from being a fan of his and talking to him at the races, and he come chatting to me and explaining that his deal was up with Specialized, which most people knew anyway. He hadn't had any results for a few years with injuries and bits and bobs and things happening. He'd started a family, and I was actually talking to Josh Bryceland at the time. I knew Josh well. I've known him since he was a little kid, and he came over to my house and we had a few chats about riding for the team. But the team at the time, Josh was still quite young, and in the end, he decided that he wanted to stay with the syndicate because he thought he still had a lot to learn from them. Obviously, that's an amazing team to be on. Most kids' dream teams, I guess, to be on. But he was still learning from Steve and Greg, I guess, and he wanted to stick with that program, which 100%, agreed with him if that was the right thing for him. But then I started speaking to Sam, and Sam seemed interested in our team, which was blew my mind, to be honest. And there's no way I thought Sam Hill would want to ride for my team. I guess when it's your own team, you're trying to do the best thing you can with it. But for somebody like Sam, who's wrote with his incredible Iron Horse Monster days and then riding for Specialized Monster, why would he want to come and ride for us? But anyway, he seemed interested, and so I asked him, what kind of budget he was looking for, which was, I hadn't dealt with anything like that before. So I went back, spoke to...
Was it a decent number? Was it a little bit shocking taking it to the bosses?
I don't think it wasn't. It was obviously a good number. A number that I would never get paid in my lifetime for doing anything. But I knew what other people were getting paid and stuff roughly. I think that's one thing in our sport that would be better if everybody knew what everyone was getting paid. I really do think that.
Yeah.
Because
do you mind sitting on that topic a bit? And we won't forget to do the Samuel signing. But I've asked some, and it's kind of a topic that comes up. And I've asked some high-profile riders, one that maybe has left the team that you just spoke about, related to Josh. And he's not sure if it's a good thing. So I'm quite undecided, but you're as a team manager, you work with these brands. Can you unpack it a little bit on why you think it would be better? And I kind of half agree. Once everyone gets used to it and it's out in the open, maybe it will be better.
Yeah, and I understand both sides of to it. As I say, my opinions are just my opinions, and I'm not saying I'm right or wrong with anything. Everyone's entitled to what they think. Um, in other industries, a job title comes up and there's a salary for that job title, or in football, somebody signs for 6 million quid an hour, and it's all over the newspaper. I think, I honestly think that, athletes in our sport, that's what we're talking about. Some of them get paid decent, and when I say decent, really well for riding a bike. But then in other industries, people get paid shed loads more for playing tennis. The risk and obviously there's as much effort goes into it, but the risk and reward of what we do is incredible compared to some other disciplines that get loads more money just because they're mainstream sports. Hopefully that'll change in the future. But I think that, the industry, some companies in the industry make a lot of money. There's no doubt that they don't make a lot of money because mountain biking is a sport, it's a leisure industry. It's huge. If you think about it, like how many people do you know that have got a tennis racket compared to who's got a bicycle? Like, I think there's more people have a bike than a tennis racket. That's just as an example. But if
it's a pretty fair example. I mean, they kind of have it. There's a lot of kids now with bikes and adults, and they definitely don't have tennis rackets still in the garage. They don't care about it.
No. So obviously, all the money that comes for tennis is from TV and outside sponsorship and stuff. But if everybody knew what each rider got paid, then as an up and coming rider, for one, that's like, it's a drive. If rider X who's come third in the World Cup in last year is getting paid X amount of money, I'm coming 25th. Rider X is coming 15th and he's getting that kind of money. You've got like stepping stones to look towards. I always, when I was racing, you have a goal like to get in the top 30 and then the top 20 and then the top 15. And I think if there's certain salaries that you can sort of move, that everybody knows about, then why is that something that should be hidden? I think you should be proud to earn that kind of money if you can earn that kind of money, because it's not forever. It's not like a CEO of a company that just can go on from being one CEO to another CEO to another CEO till they're in the retirement age. You can't do that with bike riding. So I think it's a good thing. And then obviously if a new team comes together, and they're speaking to sponsors about budgets, and every team that wants to have a decent budget needs to have a high profile rider, because if they don't, the other industry sponsors won't put any money into it. And so I think it's a good building block to know, right, I'm going to put this program together. A top 10 rider costs that much money. He's on that much money. His contract's coming to an end. So that's how much money he's going to be looking for. I can base my team budget around trying to get a rider for that salary. And then, if a rider's coming to the end of the contract and they're on X amount of money and another team wants them, then they need to think, well, if I pay him a little bit more, then I can get that rider onto my team. And, as a team manager, that pisses me off when you've built a rider up and you've stuck with them, and then all of a sudden they start getting good results from all the work you've put in and based with them. That can be annoying if somebody then comes in and nicks their rider. But then when you sit back and think about it, each rider only has a small career. And if you can step up again and increase their salary, again, that's something that you can speak to your sponsors about, rather than maybe potentially losing that rider to another team. So yeah, in my opinion, I think all professional rider's salary should be out there.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, there was a time, my first contract, I was 2 World Cup, just as a reference, just as like this reference point. So I'd had 2 top 10s, I'd won a Norber, and my offer was one of the only offers that come in, right? So supply and demand. So there's that challenge. But the offer, I couldn't really do anything about it because I take that or I'm a privateer. But the offer was less than what the mechanic got because he was a US citizen, and they probably looked at it as like, okay, he needs to at least have a manager wage of one of these fast food restaurants, so the equivalent, right? Like a basic wage, because he's basically committing the full year to driving the truck around and helping us. Like, it is a full-time job. Let me just put that out there. But the rider that's risking life and limb, and all the pressure's coming back to the rider when the results start dropping and the mechanic saying, hey, let's, what can I do? Like, we kind of need you to do better so that this whole thing stays alive. I'm getting way less than that, than a basic wage. So then you can say, well, that's not right, because you'd had a certain number of results and you were this in the ranking. Like, you can't, there should be like a minimum pay, because that company definitely had the money, but they leveraged me. Now, I accepted and I signed the contract. So I didn't bitch at the time, and I'm not really bitching now. I'm just saying it seems like a big disconnect. And if it was out in the open, there would probably be a little bit more protection at the bottom. And then at the top, yeah, it'll be definitely interesting. Will that legitimize our sport or make us less mainstream? I don't really know. If you compare our salaries to motocross and golf and all these things, maybe we won't even get taken seriously. However, we're not really getting taken seriously as it stands now from outside industry.
No, and that's a good point. But when I started racing, okay, I was in my mid-20s. I'd already worked at a normal job from leaving school for 8 or 9 years, and I didn't get paid a good salary because my heart wasn't into it. I worked in an office, in a finance office, that I absolutely hated every minute of it. And I could have done all my exams and passed all my exams and gone on and got a decent salary. But I didn't want to do that. I ended up leaving and started mountain biking. Not as a career choice. I just went to a race and ended up doing well and just absolutely loved it, and then fell into it that way. But at the time, I was, and I've only thought about this later. In the UK, downhill was a big thing then, as in, like, it was on Channel 4 TV, the national series. First year, I did 1 year racing in 97, and then I raced, my first year elite was in 98. I managed to get into elite pretty quickly. And it was on national TV in the UK, which is, we've got a big demographic. It was on Channel 4. It was sponsored by Toyota RAV4 at the time. So, it's pretty big time if you think about it back then. And I came second in the national series behind Petey that year. And I basically borrowed my bike and I got, well, they lent me a slalom bike and they lent me a downhill bike, which I had to give back at the end of the year. And I think I got £1,000 in photo bonus, which I earned in the first month because I got second at the first national and was in every and the UK was really good for magazines, so I was in MBUK, Dirt, MBR, all that stuff, because people didn't know who I was. And then after that, I started racing World Cups. Like, my first World Cup was later on that year. Qualified 17th. I made it through to the finals. Everyone told me there's no way you'll qualify at World Cups and stuff. And I literally, had to give my bikes back at the end of the year. And I was on the TV and I was in every magazine so much. So, like, and that was kind of my career, the most I ever sort of earned, but I never really did that super well, but I got 10th at the first ever Fort William World Cup. I won like a national dual title. Say I got lots of podiums in the UK and did well in the UK. And I think one year there was like a poll thing with Dirt magazine and stuff, like the top 10 most sort of riders in the magazines that got the most press, and I think I was like number 3. So looking back now, like I should have got paid some money, you know. But at the time, I didn't really think I deserved it. But now, as I've learned a lot more about the industry and everything, then you know I should have done. I think, and like you said there, these companies deciding what you're going to get paid, that they make you that offer, and 100% that mechanic who, if he's doing a full-time job, he needs to earn enough money to live, unless, you know, I think back in the day it was sort of perceived that, you know, a mechanic would be a young shop mechanic that didn't earn a lot of money and just wanted to travel on the World Cup circuit, and that's all well and good for like a year or so, but at the end of the day, we've all got to live and feed ourselves, you know. Like one of a big sponsor, like what sponsored you, that they wouldn't, you know, the managers there wouldn't work for minimum wage, or you know, a big company can go to Eurobike and spend $250,000 on a Eurobike stand for the week. You know, it's the balance of everything isn't quite right, in my opinion.
The money is when there clearly is money there, then it's a bit of a piss take to do less than minimum wage. When you're asking someone to do a full-time job, it's not recommended, nor do they want you to go get a part-time job at home to pay some of your expenses because you don't have enough. So yeah, it's such a catch-22. I think I agree with you. If it came out and we were a bit more open, some of the first-time factory riders, they might be forced to pay some of the guys a little bit more. Then there'll be less money for the other guys that are on like the sort of the trying to make it. And I'm not trying to come across harsh, and there might be a knock-on effect, but maybe it would weed out people that are unrealistic about getting a big factory ride at some time. And in other sports, that happens very quick. You know, it costs you a lot of money to probably make it in tennis, costs you a lot of money to make it in golf, probably costs you a lot of money to make it in motocross. So at some point, it's sink or swim, right? And maybe in our sport, we're letting it drag out too long. I don't want the field to go smaller and that whole side topic whether 30 in the final is right or wrong. I'm not really for that because I love a Cinderella story. I think it takes every rider a little bit longer to find his feet. But when you've been going at it a couple years and you're still just getting parts and frames, and it's like, okay, so if you're just doing that as a summer holiday and you're aware of it, that's cool. But if you are still trying to make it in the sport, if the salaries were out there and there was sort of a tiered system, like, okay, if you're not in this ranking, we can't even give you parts because we're trying to give the factory teams money and parts. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying.
No, 100%. And yeah, I agree with that. That would be a good structure for doing it. Obviously, you know, it would also be good, you know, say you were a 16-year-old kid and you were doing well in the youth category, and you were, you know, coming towards the end of school and deciding what you're going to do. You know, some parents 100% are just fully into, you know, their kids racing bikes and stuff, and that's the be all and end all. But then there might be other parents that think, well, you know, you need to go to uni or you need to go and get a job so that you've got a career, you know, set up for yourself. But if all salaries like that and salaries for mechanics jobs, team managers jobs, soigneurs jobs, if that was all documented where you could look, you know, a kid could say to their mum and dad, look, if I go into this industry, I can earn this kind of money doing this. I'm not very academic at school. I'm probably going to get this job, and that's going to be that salary. I can get this salary if I go down this career path. I think that would help with some decisions like that. But yeah, if you had a structure where it was sort of on your ranking, which I guess it kind of is a little bit, but if it was a bit more documented, then I think that would be be really good. And the one thing I don't understand, and I don't know if you get this a lot, but I get so many young kids coming to me and saying, I want to be on a team. I want to be sponsored. I came 5th in my category at the local downhill race. It seems that every single kid in mountain biking expects to be sponsored. And you try and explain to them, well, why, what are you doing for that company that they're going to invest all this money into, whether it's just a free bike or whatever? It's still a lot of money. And I think things like that needs to be explained. Some of these, there's so many articles on bike setup. You can click on a video on how to set your SRAM gears up. I don't think there's enough information out there on how exactly the whole structure of the sport is. I think that would be something that needs to be done.
We're doing a little bit on the podcast because when riders come on and their direct messages are often, how do I get sponsored? We say it quite often. I think it's the wrong question. It is odd. I think the right question is, how do I get faster? How do I navigate difficulties in my race career? How do I further my career? I mean, yeah, I don't know what that is. Hey, and it's the same as the bike shop. Everyone wants a discount at a bike shop. It's just part of the industry because I don't know. It's just been a bit rough around the edges and wild west for so long, but it's damn well corporate now. You look at the earnings and which we'll get to later is there's been buyouts and all sorts of corporate structures that you've been through and now seeing the horrible side of that. There must be some more education. It's a two-way street, sponsorship. But I think if you get to the point that you are so good, someone will not ignore you. And that should be the goal is, you want to get sponsored to help your parents for sure. But it shouldn't be the goal. It's like being famous for being famous, and maybe that's the new generation, the YouTube stardom and the clicks and the likes. Certainly is a challenge. But maybe let's shift gears to you half being starstruck because Sam Hill put us all in awe, some of these runs. And now you're actually engaging them to come onto your team where you guys have built a bike yourself, not a big name bike, not globally so proven through Maddie. But I mean, that's pretty awesome. We segued a bit, but that's an exciting time for you as a team manager personally and for the brand.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was chatting to Sam, I think it was in Norway at the World Cup finals in 2012. I think Stevie Smith won that race. Sam had been over and he said that the team looked good and he liked our bike and stuff. And I was like, cheers, that's, nice of you. And then I was talking to Josh Bryceland and then that didn't turn up. And I actually told my wife was at a race. I think it was at Leogang that year, and she said, "There's a lad that keeps walking." She doesn't really know who all the riders are. She said, "There's a lad that keeps walking past the pits, and he's looking in as if he's looking for you, and he's got a little baby and stuff." And I'm thinking, "What's she on about?" Anyway, it turns out it was Sam, and then I got chatting to him a bit, and then at Norway, I just said to him, "Well, joking like, so do you want to come and ride for us next year then, Sam?" And Sam was like, "Have you got the budget?" And I just, what he's like, he's quite dry and funny.
And he would have said it in those few words, right? He's not a man of many words.
No.
But when he says something, it's either super funny or super sort of important.
Yeah. So then I went home and I told my wife that. I said, that lad who you said was looking in the pits, it's Sam Hill, and he's like, amazing. And so she said, "Well, what are you doing? Email him then." And I was like, do you think so? So anyway, I sent him an email to say, "Were you serious?" And he came back and said, "Well, have you got budget?" And I was like, how much budget do you need? So he told me. So then I rang my boss up and said, what do you think about, bearing in mind my ex-boss, Michael Cowan, who's been at Chain Reaction since he was 16, like the biggest downhill fan you'll ever meet in your life, like really good bike rider, race. I think he's pretty much raced every Masters Worlds for the last 300 years, but been racing mountain bikes way longer than I have. He said, Sam Hill. Yeah, I was like, yeah. He said, and obviously Michael is the person that, along with Chris Watson, who used to own Chain Reaction, are the people that allowed me to put the race team together and run it. 100% those guys that let me do this. But Michael's really cautious with money, always really doesn't waste money, doesn't spend a lot of money. And so my budget was always quite, minimal, and we had to, be careful with it. And to be honest, I always ran the team as if it was my money, not somebody else's money. I always tried to be as because I was grateful for them letting us do this. But as soon as Sam Hill was involved, all of a sudden the team budget was like, oh yeah, well maybe we can get some more money. So I've been, battling with my budget for flipping years. Anyway, Sam gave us this figure. Typical Michael said, well, why don't you offer him this much, which was way less, but I guess that's how businesses work. I'm like, I can't even ask him that. It was embarrassing. Anyway, long story short, we came to a figure that they were happy with, Sam was happy with, and then we agreed. And then I was like, oh shit, this is really happening. And then I started panicking, thinking, Christ, how am I going to manage Sam Hill? Oh God, what? And honestly, I was freaking out. And then, but as many people know, I'm literally the biggest winger you've ever. I'm not super organized, super structured. I just wing it, and it seems to work out most of the time. But I've got so much passion for what I do. I think that helps me. Anyway, so obviously he's still riding for Specialized, and I spoke to Sean, his ex-team manager, who's his Monster team manager, saying, Sam's going to ride for us, and but I couldn't say anything till his contract was up on the 31st of December. So obviously all the media people at Chain Reaction, who I dealt with, I did this press release for them, and they did it all. And then the guy, Matt Cole, I think it was, he was going off on the Christmas holidays, so he had it all ready to go. Sent it off to all these people with an embargo for the 1st of January. And then just before New Year, I think it was between Christmas and New Year, some flipping little German media magazine posted Sam Hill's riding for Chain Reaction Cycles. So then I'm just getting phone calls and emails and people saying, what's all this about? And I'm like, oh my God. I was like, Chris, New Year's Eve, I was flat out flipping messaging people and apologizing and all this stuff. So anyway, that was a nightmare. But then it came out, and to this day, it's still the most media the team has ever got. And, at the end of the day, is that what I'm trying to win races and get results, but to the end of the day, sponsors and race teams, is it more important to get more media than it is to win races? You tell me.
Well, I mean, it's certainly part of it, especially this day and age. You're building a brand as well, and which you were doing, right? You're a race team, but building that brand of CRC and Nukeproof became a huge brand. So I would say eyeballs were equally important, and the story of Sam Hill adds credibility whether he was able to win the race or not. But speaking of that, so it almost implodes. That's hilarious, because I would probably be the same. So you say you wing it, but I think you're more like a say yes and then figure it out after the fact, which you're clearly capable of doing. And I think athletes are.
Yep.
I think these embargoes and signing riders till December 31st is the dumbest thing ever. Our contracts, pay them the same money, It just takes one team to say, I'm going to pay you the 12-month money. Give me the number. The Samuel gave you a number. And in your last year, your contract ends on October 31st for all I care. Don't care, just whatever it is. So then you go into like a silly season, or at least an open season. Go test some other bikes. If some guy offers you a new contract, you can be seen in public riding the bike from November 1st, for God's sake. Like, what are we doing having these contracts on these calendar years? It makes no sense. So then the guy, we all know everyone's riding their new bike, but he's not allowed his friends to post it on. So it's a shit show.
Yeah. Yeah, there's many things in the industry that I've disagreed with, and I'm not very good at not telling people what I think. I kind of wear my heart on my sleeve, and that probably gets me in trouble a few times. Like, it absolutely does my head in that you sometimes they don't want you to ride a prototype bike that you've had for a year because that bike's not coming out till next year. That kind of stuff does in my opinion, like having a new bike for a brand, it grows attention. I understand for the sales, if you've got shitloads of bikes left over that you can't sell, it might sort of make people not want to buy that bike because they know there's a new one coming out. I understand that, but just some of the things that the industry does, it doesn't make sense in my opinion. And like you say, that's one of them. For instance, the English Formula One rider he signed for Ferrari in 25? He's still got a whole.
Oh yeah,
Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah, so it's not
Lewis
rumors.
Hamilton.
He's actually signed it, but he's got another year, or this year, still on Mercedes. I don't follow it enough, but I followed a little bit.
Yeah, we'd get flipping chucked off the flipping out of the industry if we did that, wouldn't we? It's bonkers. But yeah, it is crazy. But anyway, so another funny story about with Sam. Obviously, Sam hadn't won he hadn't even been on the podium for a few years with Specialized, and nothing to do with Specialized. It was just, Sam had a few injuries and one after the other, and that knocks you confident, knocks you, your fitness and everything else that that all comes together to end up with not the results that a rider was having a few years before. But I know Sam, speaking to Sam since, and all the things we've talked about on the team, the Specialized bike that he got towards the end of his contract with Specialized was a new carbon bike. I think he's mentioned before that he liked the Specialized bike. It wasn't like some people think, he just only liked the Iron Horse bike, but obviously he liked the Iron Horse bike, but he also liked the early Specialized bikes, and he had some great success on them. And then when they were one of the first people to make a carbon downhill bike, and things have moved on, and people have figured out how to make carbon less stiff and whatever. And he just didn't quite gel with that bike as much. So a combination of that bike, injuries, all the other factors that were going on, accumulated in him not having the results that he'd had the previous few years. And quite a few people said to me, why are you sponsoring Sam Hill? He's been and gone. He's had his best time, and that was it. And I'm thinking, what are you talking about? If he gets a bike that he's happy with, if we can have fun, I think Samuel can win again, no problem. And that was just me thinking that, not like other people telling me. That was my thoughts on it. And other people were like, "Nah, you're wasting your money, you're wasting your time." I'm like, but I don't really listen to other people a lot. I take on board what they say, but if I believe in something, I'll just go for it. Anyway, when Sam, just before we signed Sam, this was another winging it thing. Sam said, "Can you send me a bike to test, please? So that I can ride the bike." Yeah, no problem, mate. No worries. Shit, we don't even have any. We didn't have any bikes. I was like, because we had a prototype bikes, and the only bikes we had were what the team had. And I'm like, oh God, I've just promised Sam Hill I'm going to send him a bike. I hadn't even got one. So I thought, right. So I went and took my bike apart, sent him my frame, because luckily we're the same size, so we both had a medium frame. Sent him that. RockShox sent him a build kit to go on it, and we shipped him off that. And so again, I was super nervous. Like Sam said, right, I'll go and test the bike tomorrow, and then I'll let you know. We had all the contract, all the agreement on how much money he wanted and everything. So then I was like super nervous again, not sleeping at home, thinking, oh no, how's he going to get on with our Nukeproof bike? Anyway, the next day, he emailed me, bought the bike's unreal, signed the contract. So I was like, right, cool. So that was how the contract, that was literally how it went. So again, I was like, wow, we must have a decent bike if Sam Hill likes it. So that was a really, it was a boost for me and a boost for everybody else. And then that first year, come onto the team, tried to keep a few of Sam's sponsors on board. So I was talking to them. That was quite a challenge. Like, he'd been with Troy Lee Designs Clothing for many years. We used, I had a good relationship with Royal Race Clothing, but Sam wanted to try and keep that on. I remember having an absolute nightmare with Stickman trying to get our logo on the front of the jersey. He hated the logo. I was like, well, Jamie actually paying for the team, so that logo's got to go on the jersey. All these things that people don't know about, that you spend months and months going backwards and forwards, changing, doing all that stuff. That's the boring stuff that goes on, but it's part of the job. Anyway, we managed to get to a position. Then Sam did a little edit on the bike on one of his local tracks, and it looked amazing, and that went out and people were buzzing on it. But still, coming into the race season, we wasn't sure how it was going to go. And in that first year, Sam got on the podium twice, which was unreal. He actually, I think he qualified third at Val de Sol. Obviously, the Val de Sol famous Sam Hill run from 2008. This was 2013. But he qualified, either qualified third or second. And I thought, this is it. Loads of people coming up to me going, Sam's going to win this. And I'm like, I was so nervous, mate. I was like literally just shitting myself at the bottom of the track. And more than anything, I wanted him to win, I think he was second on the top split. And then I knew Sam got faster and faster down the track, but he came out of that really wild, steep, rooty section in the middle, where it kind of turns right and then drops down, turns left before you go onto the flatter section. And there's a massive boulder and got kicked out into the berm, and he hit that full chat, committed, and flipping went over the bars. And I was like, oh my God. So that was a big disappointment. But his results started coming, and he seemed to be having fun, and I got on straight away really well with Sam, and we had a great season, and obviously the whole team was buzzing, and it was just going in the right direction. And then so moving into 2014, everything was moving forward. We had the same bike which he liked. We had really cool colorways on the bike, and the kit looked good. And I think we'd moved back to Royal Racing there because the thing with Troy Lee didn't work out too well. I can't remember why, but it was always a mission to make our logo look good. Anyway, the team looked great. The guys were buzzing on the look of the kit. The bikes were blue and yellow. Everyone liked the look of it. So you know yourself, if you feel good and you like the look of your bike, that's a big part of being confident and wanting to do well. And so came into Fort William World Cup, and I think Sam qualified first, and I'm like, mint, we're on here. And then flipping Troy Brosnan went and won his first ever World Cup, his mate and former team rider that he'd mentored. And Sam was like,
I was going to say, almost protege,
Yeah.
What a guy. That's fun, yeah. You must be like, for shit's sakes.
I was like, come on. I was like happy for Troy. You know me, I'm happy for anybody that wins a World Cup.
Yeah, yeah.
But that particular day, I thought, oh my days. It's in the UK. All the CRC people are there. All the Nukeproof guys are there, which are the same people. And I'm like,
You're like, I'm going to look like a
me.
genius if he can just win this race.
Well, not me, but it would have been a nice thing to happen. But anyway, Sam was close to winning. We got second. It was still a fantastic day, and then we went on, got some other good results, and then we were going off to Mont St. Anne, and Mont St. Anne's a big thing, a big iconic another race like Fort William. Sam's obviously won a world championship at Fort William and had many good results there. So we went off to Fort William, and one thing that people maybe don't realise with our team was whenever we were travelling abroad, it was quite difficult for us because we didn't have a factory team backing in that country. So, we have to source our own tents and our own things like that. There's no vehicles that we can use from, say a big brand that has multiple setups in every different country. They get help from that. So it was always a challenge for us going to somewhere like Mont St. Anne. So we went into Mont St. Anne, got there. All the lads were riding fast. Obviously, Sam was right on the verge of winning and being on the podium. And also that weekend was a huge weekend media-wise because Santa Cruz and Specialized both were launching their new carbon downhill bike, and they both had, a lot fast riders on their programs like they always do. Sam won it. Unbelievable. I think to this day, one of the best days I've ever had, at a bike race. Sam beating those brands on our, Nukeproof bike and with our little program that we had, that was just phenomenal, mate. I was so happy. And Sam was really happy because he hadn't won a World Cup for ages. And it was just unreal, mate. I don't, it's one of them days that I'll be buzzing on for the rest of my life. And then the week after, I think, was we went to Wyndham and all three, we didn't get a podium, but all three of them were in the top. Him, Mike, and Joe were all in the top 10. So another amazing result. So obviously it costs a lot of money to go on one of them trips for us, but it was definitely good fun. And we had such a good time over there. Like, I'm a bit of a joker and a bit stupid, and but Sam is so easily influenced on doing things. It's incredible. Maybe you can ask him a bit more about that. I won't spoil it, but some of the funny things we do, like, going to the local golf course where all the Americans are super serious, with the big cigars, and we'd sit at the side of the track, and just as they were teeing off, I'd hit the horn, and I've never seen Sam laugh as much as that in my life. Like, I remember one guy throwing his club at the car and calling me an asshole. But just the little fun things that we did between the races, I think at that point we just had everything dialed. Obviously we had phenomenal mechanic with JC there, so Sam was dialed with his bike, never had to worry about his bike. All the components were great, and yeah, it was all going well, mate. It was going really well. And then we went to the World Cup finals, and because we were doing so well, I asked the Chain Reaction Cycles events team. They had an events team as I ran the race program, but they also had an events team that went to different events. Like if they sponsored the Tour of Britain or whatever with road, then an events team would help with that, with the promotions. And if there was a race series in the UK, the events team would be there. And I asked them, could they use some of their budget to come to the World Cup finals in Maribor? Maribel. And so they did, and they paid the money to be at the finish line. They had massive CRC tents there. A friend of mine that used to work for them, who used to be a top DJ, dance DJ back in the day. I mean, that's what I did for 8 years when I worked in an office. I literally went to raves, and that was my life, working in an office, going to raves. So it was incredible that we had all them guys there. He had his DJ set up for after the race. and Sam qualified first. Mike was in the top 10. Joe was in the top 20. But then Matt Simmons, who Will Longdon nicked him off the team. This is the only time it's happened to me, to ride for the Madison Saracen team. Like Sam said to me, he used to call him Snacks because he ate so much food. Sam was like, "What? Why is Snacks riding a Madison?" I'm like, "Bud, it's not a Madison. He rides for Madison. His bike's called a Saracen." Sam had no clue. He's so funny like that.
He's
Anyway,
so in his own bubble. That's
yeah, like,
100% can see that happening. Why is he
but how
riding a
funny is it?
Madison?
But why is
He's
he
like,
on a
dude,
Madison?
you're
Why is
some
Saki
kind of wool.
Anyway,
You're like,
so
dude, it's a Saracen. He's like, yeah, that's what I meant. But no, you don't even know the difference. That's great.
yeah, it's so good. Anyway, we goes to this World Cup finals. Sam qualifies first. Simmons is riding on his Madison. I think he qualified second. No, hang on a minute. No, Sam qualified second. Simmons qualified first. So I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah, he was flying. I remember this race.
I'm like, this is a disaster. Anyone in the world could beat Sam, but not him on that team. Do you know what I mean? And anyway, Sam, I was looking at the splits after the seeding and stuff. Sam was hauling ass all weekend. It was a track that him and Mike were buzzing on. Joe was flying. It was off camber. It was rough. It was natural. Like Sam's, and then it had all that flat out off camber stuff at the end, which Sam's insane at riding. Then I'm looking at the splits after qualifying, qualifying it wasn't it? And I'm like, dude, you were slow on that bottom split. You should by far be the fastest dude there. Like all off camber grass, flat pedals, flipping, no pedaling. Like what's going on? Right, bud. Okay. So anyway, he goes up, did his run, beat everyone, came into first. I was like, thank Christ for that. Next minute, Simmons sets off, green on the first split. Oh my God. Green on the second split. Oh no, this isn't happening. And luckily, Sam went that fast on that bottom split because I told him, I don't know if it was because I told him or I don't know if he got excited or whatever. But, he came into that last corner, foot out, drifting. Like, you couldn't have a better scenario and won the race. And then that was just incredible, mate. And then we had that party with all the flipping old school rave music and stuff at the finish line. And yeah, that was incredible. All the crap that you go through putting a team together in the off season and the headaches you have and arguing with people about the logos and everything else that goes with it. Cooking their dinner for them all and flipping everything that I hate, all the stuff I hate, but you just do. That just makes it all worthwhile. Fantastic.
That's unreal, man. I hope I can see the smile on your face, and it must bring back such good memories. Obviously, it's a tough time now with all the economy and shit going on, but just going back to that Marybelle, those open grass slopes, like it's fairy tale shit, right? It's Sam Hill at his best on the off cambers. You giving him a little bit of a pep talk. I mean, you couldn't write a bit of script, You're like, Sam, I mean, I can't ride like you, but what are you doing on these slopes? Like, this is your bread and butter. Are you going to let Simmons smoke you on your bread and butter?
Yeah. And, fair play to Matt. He had the best race of his life there.
Yeah, he was flying. I remember
second.
that. Yeah, he was really fast. I remember that race.
Yeah, and I don't wish any rider not to win a race, but that one, I wished him not winning that race.
Well, I mean, you're also, it's like, it's pretty normal. You're going to want your riders to win, you don't want anything bad to happen. But you're like you said, it makes up for how much sacrifice, how much work. Everyone goes, oh, that job must be amazing. You're the manager to riders like Sam Hill, Chris Kovarik, and you just remember all the good stuff. I've seen you cook for these bunch of misfits. They probably don't all help with dishes all the time. Maybe not always you had a good bunch of guys, but it does drag on, especially with tough races. So it's cool when you have those sort of fairy tale endings, And I mean, I forget when he transitioned over, but was that kind of at the point that he started transitioning? And then from your side, because you were in these conversations, to me, he was burnt out and bored of downhill in the same venues. And like, what prompted this move to enduro for your team and people like Sam? I mean, how can it not be a lot about Sam, this podcast? But what prompted
No,
that? Because that's one of the most interesting times for someone like that to move over, and your team to go from success of downhill and go, okay, we're just going to switch.
yeah, for sure. It wasn't just a one thing choice to do that. So it was a combination of things. So a couple of weeks after that Maribel race, we're thinking, this is it. We're going to win every single World Cup there is from now on, every World Championships. That's how buzzing we were after that race. Mike Jones is going to be on the podium. So is Joe Smith. Literally going to be on the podium now. That's it. We've sussed it. And it was the Norway World Championships a few weeks later. And for some crazy reason, Mike Jones didn't get picked for the UK team. I don't know what the excuses was with British cycling. I can't remember, but 100% Mike should have been on the UK team that year. I think he was sixth in Maribel. Anyway, Joe Smith didn't make the team that year. Obviously it's hard to make the UK team, GB teams sometimes, as we had so many fast riders at the time. But anyway, we were all, the team was amazing, right? We had this really good team that year. Everyone was getting on. Sam was going to the Worlds after winning that World Cup finals. He'd never won in that half yell track before. So we all decided, I said, sod it, we'll all go. So we all went together. Joe, me, the mechanic, JC, and Mike Jones and Sam. And all week, me, Mike, and Joe were walking the track with Sam at the side of the track for every practice run, looking at every line. I remember there was a line. Do you remember that race? You set off and you do those big jumps at the start, and then you come flying into that, turns right and goes into that chute down the woods that was really rough. Well, Sam had a line further down in the woods, one of his sneaky lines, that was definitely faster than anybody else was doing. When he's on it, he can just pull off these maneuvers that, look impossible to do, and he makes them look easy. So I'm like, but that's miles faster. So he didn't ride it much, but he might have done it a couple of times. And unfortunately, probably, at this point in World Championship racing, the French have got about, 20 people on that section. The GB team have got people on that section videoing and everything. And there was one line in that first rocky chute that was super rough. And obviously Sam's on flat, so it's hard to keep your feet on the pedals. But you had to bunny up from one side on the left into the right, into these massive holes. And that was faster than going straight down the middle. And he wasn't doing it. And obviously I can't tell Sam how to ride his bike, but there's the odd time where I say, bud, I think you've got to do that. And then I'm thinking, oh no, why have I told him that? Because if he flipping does that and his feet blow off and flipping he has a massive crash, then that's going to be my fault. But I just said, look, if you think you can do it, then I think that's faster than what you're doing. Everywhere else on the track, I was timing everything, but you're faster than anybody through every section. Right, okay. So I walks down there, comes flying into that section, and I'm thinking, oh Christ, please. I was like, one, I don't want him to do it, and two, anyway, he just done it, no problem. Absolute piece of piss to him, and he was like, yeah, that was fine, but okay, I'll do that. Right, sweet. But then so going into that race, I thought he could definitely win this. And to me, unfortunately, it's never happened to this point. But me running a race team, we've never won a world championship. Obviously, Sam's won world championships before, so it's not like, obviously it's a big thing to him. But to me, it was just like the dream thing that could ever happen. It doesn't happen for a lot of people. But that race, but I'd been asked to do the commentary as well, because I used to do that a bit of commentary and stuff. I was doing the commentary with Warner. I don't think it was Freecaster. I don't know who it was for. This might have been the end of my commentating career, because Sam come on the screen and he took it quite easy in qualifying. So he was off early on, or it might have been your overall UCI ranking. You know that how they weirdly do the list of the finals. Anyway, Sam come down. He was like 3.5 seconds up on the mid split, and he had this line in the last rock garden that was so fast, and he come into that, and I'm like, he's made more time. I was watching, and he's made more time up on the split time, and then he flipping went over the bars. I could not believe it. He'd done that line, every single practice run, perfect. Every time, miles faster than everyone else. And he told me that he came into that split and somebody shouted at him, "Sam, you're up." And whether that flipping did something in his mind, or he just went a little bit too fast. I think he was like a couple of inches offline, he said, and he had that horrendous crash where he, don't know if you remember, he went over the bars and scorpioned into a rock head first, and his back folded over. And I don't know if everybody knows to this day, but because obviously later on that day, G ended up winning, and Josh Bryceland was faster than G until he blew his foot up on that crazy jump that he tried to jump to the finish line on. But I think Sam was either a second and a half or 2 seconds up on Josh's split time. So if he hadn't crashed, he'd have won that race. And that, from going to where how excited I was, before at Maribel, I've never been as sad or deflated or anything at that race. That was from being up here to being down there, and not just for myself, for Sam. I wanted Sam to win that race so bad. I've never been to a race myself. Everybody likes winning races, but I've never been to a race and wanted to win for myself as bad as I wanted him to win that race. So that was disappointing, but that's how it was. And he didn't really hurt him. Well, he actually did hurt himself. It turns out a few years later he got an X-ray for another injury on his back, and he had 2 compression fractures in his spine, which would have been from that crash. But anyway, that was the start of where I'm going with your question about enduro. So Sam was obviously went home for the off season. We were making a new bike, just a version 2 of the Nukeproof Pulse, which was with all different custom tubing, thinner, lighter. Everyone has to have a light downhill bike. Biggest mistake ever. We made this new lighter bike. Sam was all fired up for the 2015 season from those amazing results he had. Mike was fired up. Joe was fired up. And the first World Cup the following year was going to be at Lords. Everything was going well. I managed to get everything dialed for the team going into that race. And then JC flew over to Australia the week before to do a bit of testing with Sam, because it was a new bike, and just do some downhill runs. And the day before he was due to fly out to meet us in Europe, I drive the van out with the UK lads and the UK mechanic, and he just washed out on a flipping fire road crossing between sections on his downhill track and completely wrote his shoulder off. And he flew out anyway to the race, and in the hope that he'd be able to ride, but he couldn't even put his hand on the handlebars, and he wasn't able to race. But reverse story of what we were doing in Norway the previous year. Sam walked the track with us all through practice and everything. He was pointing out these crazy lines that he was going to do for Mike Jones, and then Mike Jones was going, "No problem, I'll do that." And I'm thinking, oh no, he's going to kill himself. but he was just buzzing with confidence. And I think the thing that really helped Mike was having the support from Sam and the belief from Sam in his own riding ability. And Mike ended up coming third at that World Cup, which was, incredible and a great start for us. So I was super disappointed that Sam wasn't able to race, but then absolutely buzzing that Mike had got third at that first World Cup. Anyway, Mike carried on getting some great results that year. Unfortunately, I think the bond that him and Sam had practicing together every week was the thing that was really helping Mike, as well as his raw speed. Like, a few World Cups later when Sam wasn't there, Mike had qualified, I think he qualified second at Fort William and then crashed in the final, and he qualified third at another one and then crashed in the final. And, I was trying to say to Mike, you're going fast in qualifying, just tidy that up in the final and, you'll be on the podium. Nah, I'm going to smoke everyone, bud. I'm going to flip and open it up now. No, don't open it up. You're already opening it up. Just do what you're doing, and I think he just didn't have that gauge that he had when he was riding with Sam, and he just kept crashing all the time. But the other thing is, then Sam was obviously felt bad on us that he wasn't racing, and he tried to come back probably too early after having his shoulder surgery, having all his ligaments repaired. And then he hadn't got used to the new bike, and for some reason, I don't know, again, it's probably a combination of things, Needles, like the new bike, the bike rode different, him trying to come back too early, not being as strong, not being as fit, not maybe being as confident in his own ability, but just didn't get any good results on the bike. And then anyway, obviously I'm a big fan of bike racing, and obviously we all go and ride our enduro bikes, as they're called these days, while we're at the World Cups and stuff, like I mentioned earlier. I think it's a good, important thing for the whole team to go out bike riding, the mechanic, the team manager, the riders, and all having fun, because that's what keeps everyone happy, as well as, the job in hand. But I went to Eurobike, where I did many times to get team sponsors and stuff. And I'd always had a good relationship with the guys at Mavic for wheels. I'd always been a huge fan of Mavic wheels from when I was first started mountain biking. And there was a new marketing guy at Mavic who I met for a meeting. And like when you just meet someone for the first time and you get on really well with them, there's something that clicks. A guy called Francois, and he was just a super guy. I really enjoyed the meeting with him, and I had fun talking to him. And he was explaining to me that their focus, they were happy to continue with us with the Mavic wheels, but there was only a smallish budget for the wheels, but their focus was going to be making some products for enduro, because enduro was on the up, with the EWS and a lot of people buying enduro bikes. So Mike and Sam had already done an EWS in Rotorua the previous year, and Sam really enjoyed it, and he won one of the stages on his Nukeproof Mega. Obviously, the Nukeproof Mega was the bike that sold a lot of units for Nukeproof, because it's an enduro bike that most people buy. Obviously, we sold quite a lot of downhill bikes, but not to the scale of the enduro bike. So I said to Francois, I said, well, what about if we do some enduro World Cups this year with Sam and the team? And he was like, oh. So I said, this is the schedule for the World Cups. We can fit in 4 enduro World Series rounds if you want us to, if you can give us some more money. So I did a deal with Mavic where we got way more budget. We had to use Mavic tires for in the enduro races, as well as the Mavic wheels, Mavic ride wear, Mavic open face helmets for trail riding and stuff. We were on Schwalbe tires for downhill, but they didn't even pay us. They just gave us free tires. So I said to Swabby, look, we're going to have to use Mavic tyres for enduro racing. And they were like, well, fair enough, if they're paying you. They still agreed to give us tyres for downhill. But Sam really liked the tyres. And I rode them and I thought, these are actually really good. And the tyres were made by Hutchinson, but they were made for Mavic. And I think to this day, they're probably one of the best weight to carcass combinations of any tyre we've ever used. They didn't quite have enough tread patterns, which we were starting to help design with, but then the Mavic tyre thing came to an end after a couple of seasons. But anyway, we decided we were going to do these 4 Enduro World Series races, and Sam seemed to be quite excited. So the first one we were doing that year was in Ireland, and obviously all the Chain Reaction Nukeproof guys were there. They sponsored the event. It was a massive setup. And we went over there the week before to go to the factory and meet everybody and take the riders. And, everybody in the place always enjoyed that because they're all bike riders. So we did that. It was a really fun week. And then we went riding at a local spot. One of our team mechanics, Brooks, was from Ireland as well. So he was taking us to some riding spots. Then we ended up down at the EWS, and I said to Sam on the way driving down, I'm like, you ready for this enduro, bud? And he, typical Sam, he said, just looked at me, went, do you mean is enduro ready for me? And I was like, well, yeah, cool. But you've got like Jared Graves and Richie Rude and all these guys that are super training and powerful and flipping clipped in. Sam turns up on his flipping mega with his massive flat pedals on, shoes on that weigh as much as Richie's bike, and came second, didn't he? I'm like, holy
You could
shit.
not tell me you could not have thought at that time he would have won a world title.
No.
Like before that race, before he got second, you must have been in the van. Yeah, we'll do these enduros. We'll do it for the team. It's cool. You like bike racing. He seemed into it. Like it didn't seem like you had to twist his arm. Okay, please do these 4 enduros so that we can get this downhill team budget going. But you could not have predicted he's going to win on flat pedals, like a series.
No.
I mean, I'm still blown away by that.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I've learned from Sam over the years of knowing him is if Sam's happy, he wants to do something, and he's got a focus, the dude can do anything. It's incredible. Yeah. I've never met anybody else like him. Like, you might think you can do things, but you can't really do them, or you don't think you can do them, even though you're saying you can do them. He's the exception to the rule. And I could see how much fun he was having. He loved the Nukeproof Mega bike. He loved that bike, and he loved riding it. And at the time, I think he's mentioned a few times before, he had a lot. He was having more kids. His family was growing, so it was becoming more and more hard for him to go downhill riding because where he lived, there wasn't really any downhill tracks other than the filthy sausage that he built. Typical Sam Hill name. So it was easy. It was easy for him to get on his enduro bike, pedal from his house to his local trails, pedal up and down, ride the downhill trails on his enduro bike and ride home. No one needed to go and shuttle him, like drive him 2 hours to the downhill tracks. So that was what his training was becoming anyway. So that helped. And then obviously when he got that second place at that EWS, I think Greg Callahan won it on his local trails. Obviously Sam and everybody gave everyone a boost, thinking, wow, this is going well. So then later on that year, we were still racing downhill as well with the team. So I was trying to split myself between, we never have a lot of staff on the team. So we've got we've got 2 mechanics, myself and the riders. That's all it's ever been. JC and Sam, I think, was it that year? I can't remember if it was that year, but they ended up I went out to a French EWS with them, we were at a World Cup the week before with the other guys on the team, and then I had to go home. Like, I don't hardly ever miss any races, but I think I went home because it was my wife's 40th birthday or something. I always feel guilty if I miss a race, so I always try and be at every race. And I was splitting myself between going, if there was a World Cup and an Enduro, then I would split myself. Like, I'd go to one Enduro and then one World Cup, because obviously Sam's the biggest name on the team and where I have to really focus on because of the budget, and the sponsors want Sam. But I also don't want to ever make the other riders on the team feel like I'm not putting as much focus on them as
it's
I
a
am
fine
on
balance,
Sam.
isn't it?
Yeah. I've probably messed up there over the years if you ask the riders, but in my heart, I've tried to be fair, with people. But anyway, Sam went off to. I actually drove Sam and JC and that out to a race in, I think it was called Valberg in south of France, and Nicolas Vulio was still super fast at the time, and it was a race I wish I hadn't missed, but I missed it because you had Nico Vulio, who's one of Sam's first heroes. Probably one of the only other people I would put in the same ballpark as Sam as a downhill rider, with his, with the achievements he's had and the natural skills that he's got. They ended up having an epic battle to win the Enduro, and Sam won and Nico got second. And so that was Sam's first Enduro World Series win, battling with Nicolas Vulio on his home tracks all day. And Sam had his favourite bike that he's ever had, a Nukeproof bike painted as a gravedigger. The gravedigger monster truck. He had that bike for that race that Rob from the marketing department had arranged with Elite Refinish. They painted that bike for him, and it was incredible. And so Sam winning that race was, I was gutted I missed that race, but obviously I was super happy for him. So anyway, the end of that season, we decided going into 2017 that the young lads had continued doing some downhill, but Sam was going to stop doing downhill and do a full EWS season and try and go after the title. So again, I was split, and there was more and more races I was having to be at, and I've got a family at home as well, so I started getting stressed out, getting a bit of grief from home and feeling guilty of not being at home much. So I started feeling like I wasn't maybe putting 100% effort or being in the right mood at every single race, what I should have been at. So it was a difficult year, as in me trying to figure out what we should do moving forward. And then Sam obviously won that world title that year, which was incredible. The first full season, he goes and wins the world title. So at the end of that year, I said, right, I've got to change this. I can't do this anymore. I was getting a bit like stressed and burnt out on it. So I said, to my boss, I said, look, I think we need to just focus on enduro. And to be fair, everything I've suggested over the years, I always run by him, but he's stuck with me with even if he thinks my plan is a bit stupid at the time, he's always stuck by me. Like, just going back really briefly, they wanted to have a downhill Irish rider on the team who was like really fast in Ireland, and so they were saying, I think you should get him on the team. But I'd lent my bike to a local lad near where I used to live to go for a bike ride on, and then he came back and said, "Oh, I won that race on your bike," and I was like, "Cool." I just lent him my downhill bike. He was only 16, and then so I said, right, well, we're going to a national race next week. Do you want to come? So I messaged the guys and got him a late entry. I said, well, you can come with us if you want, and stay in our pits and do this national. And he was like, wow, okay. So I took him to a national, a UK national, which again was a big rider roster. You know, a lot of fast riders were there. He was in the youth category, but he ended up winning the race by about 8 seconds. And so I went home, went back home after that race and rang my boss up and said, I know you want that Irish kid on the team, but I'm sponsoring this kid from round ours. And he was like, what do you mean? I'm like, yeah, he's called Elliot Heap, and I'm going to sponsor him on the team. And he was like, oh, right, okay. Anyway, that ended up working out quite well. The next few years, Elliot won a load of races in the UK, came third in the Downhill World Cup overall in junior in his second year. So Elliot was that year that Sam won 2017 EWS. Elliot started, that was his first year elite in downhill, and he started coming in top 30 and top 25 and stuff. So that's pretty good for your first elite year. And so I said to Elliot, look, and Mike, I said, guys, I'm going to have to go and do enduro racing because Sam's just won the title. That's where the sponsors are coming in from. You've got a choice. You can either stay on the team or you can go and look for another team to do downhill. Mike was like, but there's no way I'm doing enduro. Flipping, I'm like, so I was really sorry to lose Mike, but Elliot decided that after speaking to his dad, he didn't want to leave the team, and he was going to stick with the team and swap to enduro. And looking back, it could have gone either way with Elliot. He could have maybe got a ride on another team and ended up having a super successful downhill career. But anyway, he stuck with us, and he won the enduro in 2018. Sam backed it up, won the world title, like full legit that year. He was so fast. He won the first 2 rounds in South America. He was going so fast that year and doing some incredible maneuvers on videos that people posted that I just wish got the exposure that a downhill race got. Like, I don't know if you remember that clip where Sam was drifting in Chile on some open, big open dirt, sort of moon dust corner. The girl that used to do the filming at World Cups, I forgot what her name is. BB, remember BB?
Yeah. You think we should try find this clip?
Mate, it's phenomenal. I still haven't seen anything better than that in all the recent World Cup clips. Like, if they had a downhill World Cup on that track, it would be insane. Just a big open piste, flat out downhill track in Chile. It was incredible. And that year Sam was just on fire. There was clips of him, like there'd be a series of like switchbacks on super steep, gnarly enduro tracks. 2018 had the gnarliest enduro tracks ever, and Sam was just taking the piss. Like, people were going around these corners, and he was just missing the corners, drifting on the inside of stuff. In Colombia, it was super muddy and slippy, and there was this gnarly, sketchy wooden bridge you had to go over in the jungle, and it was like so vertical you couldn't see over the edge. It was that steep into this big, wide off camber flat corner, and they'd literally just piled a few wooden pallets up as a berm. I was terrified, me, and obviously all the crowd were there. Sam comes pedaling over the top of the bridge, jumps into the thing, and went inside. Like, nobody in the entire race tried to go inside. He just went inside with his foot out. Nearly hit all the people in the crowd because they were all stood there because no one rode there. It was just some of the things he was doing that year was just incredible. And I just don't think they got the coverage that it would have got if it had been at a Downhill World Cup. So obviously the end of that season, Sam won the Enduro World title and Elliot won the under-21 world title, and that was again probably one of the top three most proudest moments that I've had running the race teams.
Yeah, man, it's awesome hearing all these stories, and it's how could it not become a Samuel podcast when he does these unthinkables? He has moved downhill along those crazy runs, crashing at Val di Sole, coming back, the flat pedals to Enduro, which someone just said, look, on paper that doesn't seem to work. But I'd seen him switch his mindset when he wasn't known for power and pedaling, and he prepared for the New Zealand World Champs. And the plan came off to the T. He was fit and strong in the in-between sections. We all know he'd be good in the technical. And he was able to adapt if he put his mind to it. So that guy's mind over matter is really impressive. And loved hanging around him. And all these stories are amazing. So thanks for sharing those. And those are the good times. Those are great times. And sometimes all good things must come to an end, Pagey? And you've been dealing... This must be good for you, probably like therapy, with all the good things you've done to appreciate what you've been able. But now, as they say, all good things come to an end with the industry, with corporate takeovers. Currently, the team has folded, correct? I don't follow all the news exactly, but is it CRC or Nukeproof or the group going under? How does that all work? If you could just brief catch up of those events, from running a team and having riders to now probably telling them I can't give you an answer or there is no team, like it's flat out folding.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. So the end of last season, briefly, Sam had been a bit burnt out on racing and enduro, and we don't need to cover all that. People saw that. He wanted to have a go at, he was coming towards the end of his career, wanted to do a year's downhill racing. That didn't go so well last year because of a few factors. Like, he jumped on the downhill bike at the end of the previous year, went to the Cairns Crankworks race where he was going to race that, get a feel for downhill again, then train on the downhill bike all off season, then come into the 23 season and do a full year's World Cup racing. Super excited again, saw the motivation back, the excitement. So, I knew it was the right thing to do with Sam. Unfortunately, I'd flipping a vine at Cairns, caught his front brake lever going around the corner, flipped over the bars, backwards into a tree, dislocated his shoulder, ripped all his ligaments out again. So that was a nightmare. Then obviously trying to race without riding the downhill bike all year straight into a World Cup season was never going to happen. But somehow he managed to qualify at the second race, just with his skills. And he was going to try and build on that year and use that year as a building block. But then, maybe trying to go too fast too early, just slid out last year and smashed his foot to pieces at another Crankworks event. So that was the end of that last year. But anyway, we had a really solid year with Dan Booker on the enduro front. He got some incredible results and started to show that he was definitely a potential podium and even championship winning rider. So I was put all the team together at the end of 23, moving into this season 24. I had all my sponsors on board. It was actually the best lineup of sponsorship I've ever had in the team. It was incredible. It was literally going to cost Nukeproof probably because the team had changed over to Nukeproof now. Nukeproof SRAM Factory Racing. It was literally probably going to cost them about 10 grand plus the products. Like, we had so many good sponsors lined up that would pay for the program. It was great. And then I'd been needing a shoulder surgery for many years. As I said earlier, I love riding my bike, and I still try and ride my bike, but my shoulder's just getting worse and worse every year. So I I was supposed to have a shoulder surgery in like April last year, but I said nah, I'll put it off till the end of the season because I've got got to drive the vans and do all the racing and stuff. So I had my shoulder surgery booked in for October. Went in and had that done. I had to put these anchors in to reattach my rotator cuff muscle, like it had snapped off here and shot back up into my neck. So they pull that down and put like 7 anchors in to hold it in. So it was a pretty solid operation. So I got home the next morning and my boss rang me up saying I was a bit off my head on morphine and flipping stuff like that. So I answered the phone and he's like, not the best news. How's your shoulder? I was like, yeah, it seemed to have gone all right. But he said, yeah, you're slurring your words a bit. I was like, yeah, well, they told me I have to take this medication for a week, otherwise it'll get really painful. So I was trying to do that. Don't like taking pain meds, me, but they said it's really important for the first week to keep on top of it. So he said, well, bad news, the company's gone into administration. I'm like, what does that mean? It's like, well, basically the company's folding unless we find an investor or a new buyer or whatever. So that's what's happening. So I'm like, holy shit, what does that mean? He's like, well, your job's not secure. You're gonna all the riders' contracts are now nil and void. So they haven't. There's no race team for next year at this point. So I'm like, trying to get my head around all this while it's been a bit off my head. So those months after that were really really tough, especially at first. I had lots of different emotions, from being like pissed off, angry, not knowing what to do. So I had to ring all my riders up and say, look guys, like Elliot and Dan Booker both had contracts through to the end of 24. So I had to ring them up and say, look, I'm really sorry, but you're probably going to have to start looking for something else, because this isn't, we might not have a race team anymore. I might not. Just to put something into, so people understand, a lot of race teams are privately owned teams. I was always an employee. So I went to Chain Reaction Cycles in the first place with the idea of running a race team, and said to them from day one, look, I'm not going to run this as a private entity. I'll just work for you as an employee. Any budget that I get in off sponsors goes straight back to Chain Reaction Cycles, and that helps with the budget for the team. So I just get a standard salary, and that's my salary. All the riders and mechanics, they're all contractors, so they send in, we do a contract with them to pay them whatever salary or whatever for the year, and then I have a team. I had a team Chain Reaction Cycles card in my name that I ran the, when we're abroad, you pay for fuel and try and pay for accommodation and everything you can on the team card to keep it simple. And then every month, like, I get a printout from the credit card and I have to fill it all out, say what every single amount is spent on, and code it all. It's a mission, but that's the way we've run the team. So when a company goes into administration, the first thing that administration company has to do is try and, one, they got rid of like a load of employees. So I think a third of the staff are Wiggle So Wiggle and Chain Reaction Cycles, Nukeproof, Vitus Bikes, DHB Clothing, a few other brands. Wiggle Limited and Chain Reaction Cycles merged, and then Nukeproof, Vitus, DHB, all those other brands, they're what are called house brands. So they're not separate companies. They're brands within Chain Reaction Cycles, Wiggle Chain Reaction Cycles. So Nukeproof isn't a bike company on its own. A lot of the original guys that worked at Chain Reaction Cycles in Northern Ireland, all still had offices in Northern Ireland. And the Wiggle staff is all in the south of England. So I'm, other than the accounting and stuff, I always deal with the guys in Northern Ireland. They're the bike engineers, the designers, my boss. Everything was in Northern Ireland. So when this happened, I was like, well, for sure I'm losing my job. The team's gone. I've lost my job. But behind the scenes over the years, I've done a lot more than just run the race team. It was my idea to come up with, make it along with the other guys to make Nukeproof bikes into a bike brand, not just a components brand. I've helped come up with bike ideas over the years, like the Nukeproof Giga, for instance. That was my idea to make that bike, which is still been my favorite bike I've had. So I've done a lot more behind the scenes than just run the race team, for the Nukeproof brand, I guess. So anyway, I didn't lose my job straight away. So from October to February of this year, I've been in like meetings every week on the computer, coming up with a plan on what we should do when the company starts up again. There was lots of changes going to happen. The Wiggle Chain Reaction company was going to go back to being a UK-based only company because of Brexit and other shipping rules across the world. That business plan that Chain Reaction had in the early days when I started working for them wasn't happening anymore. That the costs of shipping stuff and import duties just wasn't feasible anymore. So we were looking at being, trying to make a really good UK company again, and the UK market's still big. So I was suggesting that, for the first year, obviously all my team sponsors, I had to tell all them that we weren't going to have a race team. So they all started going away and spending those budgets that they'd saved for my team on other programs. So I said, look, I think we should do a UK based program along with some, really cool riding edits and stuff for 24, so that we're not trying to travel all over the year with no budget. So they agreed to that kind of setup. And so I was planning that all the time. And then I planned because all this was happening and I'd had a bit of a crap time over it over the last few months. I decided to book a family holiday to California. I've been putting it off for years and years. One, to just take the family to Disneyland and take them around California, because I've spent a lot of time there back in the day, and then go and visit some of my good friends and stuff. We decided to do that. And then 2 days, we're having a great holiday. It was a nice change for me, because any holiday we've ever been on before has had something to do with biking, dragging them along to a race and then going off for a week's holiday or whatever. So we had a great time. And then 2 days before, I was actually staying at Kathy Sessler's house for a few days, and my boss rang me up and said, sorry to ring you on holiday, but going to have to tell you that, as of today, you've lost your job. Everything's gone. The whole company's gone. Everybody's going to lose their jobs, and that's the end of it. So
fuck, and he does it on holiday as well. Shit.
Yeah. So that was some people have asked me, like, are you super depressed? And you obviously, I'm the sort of person that, when things go wrong for me, maybe I don't show it, and it kicks me into a. Obviously, I have. Obviously, I worry internally because I in our house, I pay for all the bills and I run the house. Like, my wife does literally everything for us. She keeps care of the house, grows the vegetables, does all our washing. Looks after the kids when I'm away, and she does a phenomenal job. Like, I couldn't do all that. And I'm useless at all that. And so, I'm the main breadwinner in the house. So, when a company goes into liquidation, it's different rules. Like normally, if you lose your job, you get a redundancy package. It's called in the UK. So depending on how many years service you've had and what your salary is and how much tax and national insurance you've paid, you get a decent redundancy package. We didn't get anything, like nothing. Like 16 years I've worked there and didn't get anything. And not just me, other employees, whether they've worked there for 2 years, for 20 years, whatever. So we had to literally, the last few weeks, I've had to go to the job centre to register as unemployed and register on the government website for a government redundancy package, which is, a tiny amount compared to what you would normally get. So all that's been shit, been stressful, and my wife's been stressed out. And, currently right now, I'm not even earning a salary. But, I've not been daft. I've always sort of in the back of my mind thought about this could happen, because running a race team isn't a flipping brain surgeon, is it? Or, a bank manager, everything can go tits up. So I've always sort of saved a bit of money and not been daft and not bought super expensive things, and had actually downgraded with our house when we moved to Scotland the other year, and we're in the hope that we might find a bigger house when we've been up here for a few years or whatever. But luckily I've done all that, so I'm not in a crisis situation at the moment when it comes to paying for my bills and putting food on the table. But yeah, it could. I guess it could make you a bit depressed, because I've had a great job for 16 years, and then all of a sudden I haven't got a job. The industry isn't in a great place at the moment. But for some reason, I came up with another really good plan while I was on holiday in them last two days, and so literally since I've been home from that holiday, other than all that other crap I've had to do and stuff I hate doing, I've come up with an amazing project that I'm putting together, which I can't tell you about now, but I will. I'm working on that at the moment that I'm well excited about. A project with me and Sam.
Okay, because I was going to say, you'll have to come chat about it, or we'll force him to come on. Maybe you're the catalyst that gets him on the podcast.
Well, I'll be honest, actually, my daughter's helping me put together, lots of people have asked me to do a podcast myself, and it's just not something I'd be bothered to do. But I'm actually going to do a few podcasts myself to promote this project. So I would love you to come on my podcast if I get it going.
Deal.
And yeah,
I'll help you with whatever you want. I've had help setting this up. I'll help.
Okay.
Sick.
So
okay.
I'm going to be doing
we're going
that.
to leave. Okay.
And hopefully soon I'll be able to announce something, but right now I can't. But I've got a few sponsors on board already. Like I say, once I've announced it, there'll be opportunities for people to jump on them and be a sponsor of this project. Because the way it's going to work is, obviously, like I say, I'm not earning any income at all at the moment. So everything I'm doing, I'm just doing myself, and it's going to be a lot of work setting this up, but it's just something that came to me, and I've had a few other opportunities with people to do some stuff in the industry, since they found out I wasn't doing my team anymore, and I appreciate every opportunity that comes my way. So if there's any more, send them my way. But
there you go. Definitely. You'll figure it out. As you've been saying, it's like a small bump in the road. It's like a race career as well, right? Suddenly ends and you feel like that's the be all and end all, and your identity's in it, and your new identity was in this race program. But with your skill set, something will come where you dive into with passion for sure. And we've all got to deal with it, right? I mean, no job is secure, whether it's running a team after being a rider, which is obviously very insecure of a job, or even corporate. Like, there's guys that were accountants at a company that was doing well, and it's done. Crazy, eh?
Yep. Yeah, like my boss, I feel sorry for him. He's had a super successful career and probably done well out of things financially, but right now he's gone from being Michael from Chain Reaction Cycles, from being 16 to, what's his identity now? You got to feel sorry for him as well. It's nothing to do with him. It's not his fault. It's like you say, it's when big corporate companies invest in companies and mess things up. Unfortunately, they don't invest in those companies because they've got the passion about the sport and the bikes like we do. They invest in companies to try and make money, and if they're not making money, we're gone.
Yeah, tough, man. So maybe it's a complicated answer to what is maybe going to sound like a simple question. Is there no way to spin off Nukeproof or buy the brand and carry the brand on, or is that not something you would want to do, even if that was somewhat possible, since you had so much to do with it?
I mean, it's not possible for me. I'm a team manager. I didn't earn the amount of money that you can buy a bike brand and run a bike brand off. But obviously, if there was an investor that decided that he wanted to invest and buy the bike brand and have me and other people who work there bring the bike brand back, then absolutely. But as far as I know, and I'm not a corporate businessman, so I don't quite understand everything, but that as far as I am aware, so a guy that owns a big chain of sports shops in the UK called Sports Direct. They're like cheap sports shops. They have like last season's lines in and stuff, but there's one in pretty much every town, and they're very popular because the stuff is a bit cheaper than going to like a bigger store. Not a bigger store, a more, a store with all the latest Adidas and Nike and all that stuff in. He a few years ago, his company or him, he bought Evans Cycles. Evans Cycles was a huge chain of mountain bike stores in the UK. I think they have about 60 different shops. He also bought that, and now he hasn't bought he hasn't bought it to continue. Like, he's not bought all the warehouses and stuff, but he's bought all the IP addresses to Wiggle, Chain Reaction Cycles, Nukeproof, Fighters, every brand that was under that umbrella. He's bought the IP addresses to that, but then everybody's lost their jobs. All the warehouses are shutting down. All the stock's been being auctioned off and sold off until there's none left. And as far as I know, he owns all those brands now. And I don't know what. I get a million text messages a flipping day asking what's happening with Nukeproof from all over the world, and I literally have no clue. I do know that.
Yeah, fair enough.
My boss, who bought the name with Chris Watson, who originally because it was an old American brand in the 90s, when they originally acquired the name before I started working for Chain Reaction Cycles, he looked into, was it possible for him to buy the brand to continue it on with obviously his good friends and colleagues that he worked with, but I don't think it was feasible. So honest answer is I don't know. I guess the guy that's bought all those addresses, he could start Nukeproof back up in any way, shape or form, or he could sell it on potentially, I guess, to somebody who wants to buy Nukeproof. I mean, in my mind, the two first things that you could do with the brand if you wanted to keep it would be to continue making Nukeproof bikes and sell them in Evans Cycles, or if he wanted to, he could just buy cheap bikes in China or wherever, slap the Nukeproof logo on and sell them in Sports Direct. Hopefully that won't happen, because we've got the brand to a really good place. I mean, the Nukeproof brand won an award not long ago in the UK for the most desirable bike brand with one of the magazines. So I don't know. It's a shame. I'd hate for the brand to go away, but at the moment, I've got nothing to do in Nukeproof anymore.
Yeah, fair enough. Pagey, you can pat yourself on the back, man. You've had an incredible career and helped so many riders, plus build these brands, probably create more jobs than you even aware of, forcing these guys to start a bike brand and doing it so successfully. It's epic. But what I'm hearing is there's a version 2 with you, because, I mean, we could honestly go hours. I wanted to pick your brain about Voglios and who's actually worthy of being called the GOAT. Obviously, we had some awesome Sam Hill stories. So maybe we should have a version 2, or you help me with some race reviews, and then we'll chat offline
Mate,
about
I'd love to
maybe
help
this
you with some
exciting
race
project
reviews.
when it comes up. Yeah, okay,
Yeah,
sick.
mate, I love the racing still. I watch every World Cup over and over again. I absolutely love. I'm screaming at the TV when the commentators are missing a puncher or saying the wrong thing.
Me
It
too.
drives me insane.
Same. It drives me mental, man. Oh, flip.
But I
Oh,
love
that's
it, mate. I
funny.
love the sport. I
That's
love
funny.
everything. So yeah, I'd love to do that. And yeah, hopefully, you'll be excited when I about this project as I am. I'm like, as well as I'm a bit sad about my job and everything else, I'm so excited about this project. It's incredible. I've not even been sleeping. I keep getting up in the middle of the night and thinking about something else and doing it. And I need to sort that out because my wife's going mad at me.
That's cool. I like hearing the stoke and another sort of passion coming to life. So, Paigey, thanks for that. I mean, we could have gone on for hours. So, version 2 is definitely coming. Race review, and then maybe we'll help promote and talk more about that other project. So, what's your Instagram? Just maybe they follow along there, because you'll probably start releasing some of that
Yeah,
news there.
yeah, I'll put it on there. My Instagram's Pager Pager 7211. Um, that's mine and my son's year of birth. That's pretty simple. But yeah, I mainly use Instagram. There's probably a lot of stuff on there that might bore you to death, but yeah, that's my Instagram. And yeah, I just want to say a huge thank you to you for having me on. We've talked about me, and thanks for the nice words, but equally, if not better, you've had a sensational career, and I've always been a huge fan of your bike riding. I love how you're so good at dirt jumping, got a great style, had all those amazing downhill results, and now you're still doing cool stuff in the industry, and you've not lost your stoke for riding and that. And at the end of the day, we just love riding bikes, mate, and that's what it's all about.
No, definitely. You've said it exactly that. Just keep the stoke for bikes, and you'll get through all these other things, whether you use it for racing or meditation or getting out the house or away from an angry boss. Um, Before you go, definitely give us a review if you enjoyed this one. And we are on YouTube. So go to YouTube, search Moving Needle Podcast. We're upping that game, but we obviously need subscribers so that we can get awesome guests like Paigey. So till the next one, thanks so much, guys.
Thanks very much.